Well, viewers, this is another session on the shooting at Queensland where the father has done an interview, and I have had tremendous trouble trying to get through these videos. I've had computer issues, interruptions. I've never experienced anything like what I've been confronted with trying to get through these videos, but this is my subject, why good people end up doing evil. And the father's just reflecting on his journey with these kids. And if we just remember some of the scriptures in Romans 7, sin takes opportunity by the things that we think we need to do, or maybe that we're told that we need to do to make God happy or stop him from being sad, and all these things. We just don't know what the background was in the way in which these killers were raised. We don't know what that was. So we'll continue on. We're at the point where the father reflects on how hard they tried as parents to raise these people to be good, and how it seemed to slip through their fingers, and there was nothing. He said that there was nothing they could do, and you have to believe that. I guess as Christian parents, they tried everything they could. And this happens to a lot of Christian pastors and people like this. They just run into trouble with their children. Their children just don't seem to end up in the right places. And this is a tragic story and tale of this. But, I reflect and think about on why. I remember in my home where we had 5 kids, and it was very difficult, and it did cause stress, terrible stress. And my wife struggled. She struggled at different times, and oh yes, there was moments there where it wasn't. You wouldn't have thought it was a Christian home. I can tell you that. And there's little negligences and little passivities that can happen that are bigger than you think. We'll continue on.
Who were 2 of 4 children look like any happy family. But Ron says in their early 20s, Gareth and his younger brother Nathaniel cut all ties with their parents.
So what catastrophic series of events or an event caused these children to go, we want to cut ties with you? I mean, that's horrific. You have to stop and pause and ask what possibly could have happened for these children to decide that they didn't want to speak to their parents anymore. We don't know. But was it their religious rules and regulations? We don't know. Something catastrophic has happened where it's become all too much for these children to care about being in contact with their parents. Something has happened. We don't know, but guarantee something has happened.
We were heartbroken. Gwen and I were both heartbroken. We tried to find the answers.
Well, it seems to me, look, okay, heartbroken or fed up. Okay, there could have been an element of being fed up. These children are just not going to abide by what we believe, blah, 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 blah. And they were fed up, broken, maybe just broken.
Within ourselves, whether we were responsible, but
because it looks like a happy family, doesn't it? And you see this all too often. And it's just, we don't understand human nature and how religion can affect it. I'm telling you, sin takes opportunity by the things we think we need to do or not do to make God happy or stop him from being sad, instead of just following the finished work of Christ. You can't put this alongside the finished work of Christ or any of that. You just have to accept that the finished work of Christ is enough and get on with your lives. Sometimes these ministers should not be ministers. They should just be fathers to their families, because the minister gets called everywhere. He's got everyone pulling at him. The poor old wife gets stuck with the children. It's hard. It's horrible. It's not what it seems on the surface.
we weren't. We had to eventually in the end say that they've made this decision as adults and we couldn't do a thing about it.
Ron said,
now, saying that he couldn't do a thing about it is partially true, but possibly at that point it was all too late for anybody to do anything about whatever the issues were. It had just gotten too far out of hand.
The two brothers were always close, but as a teenager, Gareth became hard to manage.
The only child was difficult was Gareth. He was very volatile, very controlling.
And that's a very transparent thing for him to say, isn't it? There was one in the group, this one, that was out of control.
Troubles with him at school in Brisbane and troubles with him at school here in Toowoomba, which we had to address, so he was difficult to control.
Were they interested or obsessed with guns?
Yes, Gareth in particular was obsessed with guns and weapons. Nathaniel to a lesser degree, but he used to go shooting with Gareth. When they were out of Monto, they used to go shooting for roos and rabbits and hares and things. Gareth was the one who was obsessed with guns.
And obviously was licensed to have firearms now.
Yeah, which I was a little surprised by when they said they had his fingerprints on record, that he was licensed to have guns, yeah.
In a bizarre twist, Nathaniel Train first married Stacey Christ.
Now, this is a bizarre twist. Now, this man married Stacey. Obviously, possibly they met through the church. The father did marry them. I think he's going to mention that in a minute. But obviously the brother, this other brother, fancied the girl as well. You'll see stories of this in the Bible, where there's some behaviour that's not all too good. But we'll go on. Listen, the girl originally marries this brother, but she ends up with the other brother over the course of their lives. And this is funny, isn't it? Because a lot of affairs usually are with the best friend or somebody close in the family or something like this, but this is twisted because the brothers still got along. So I wouldn't be surprised, I'm stretching a little bit here, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was possibly sleeping with both of them.
Ron says the couple had two children, Aidan and Madeline, who are also estranged from the rest of the family. Then somehow Stacey ended up with Gareth and was also involved in the shootout and killed by police.
So the girl swapped brothers, and married the other brother. And mentioning of the estranged, there's some shunning. Is this shunning? I mean, what? It sounds very similar to the Jehovah's Witnesses form of shunning, doesn't it? Where nobody talks to anybody anymore because they haven't fitted in with the beliefs and this kind of thing. I would not be surprised if this is a form of shunning that's just been going on here. It's a horrible. But the swapping of between the two brothers by this girl, that's just what do you say? This is how far the degradation can go.
I married them. I married them here in Toowoomba, at the Baptist church here in Toowoomba, yeah.
Did you know that Stacey had gone on then to marry Gareth?
No, absolutely no idea.
The newspapers have speculated that this was some kind of love triangle, but what's your reaction to that?
Well, I think my second son, Gareth, was, as I've shared with you, he was on the Asperger's line. Very difficult to control, very overpowering. And I just think in the end that he took over that relationship that Nathaniel and Stacey had. Because Gareth and Nathaniel are fairly close because they're the two brothers next to each other.
I don't know what being close has to do with the girl swapping between the two, but who did he learn his controlling and dominating character off? Could it have been the rules in the house? There's a lot of questions here, and I don't want to, probe too far into it because it's very personal for these people, but you've got to learn some things from this. The background here is Christian, and it hasn't worked out at all. Now look at this window, how it's open. And this is the police car. It was shot to pieces, this tactical vehicle, probably through that window.
You were aware that Gareth and Stacey were living in the bush?
No.
You had no idea where they were?
No idea.
Ron said,
And it seems to me like he didn't want to have any idea either. He's wiped his hands of these children.
says he had no idea Gareth had become conspiracy addicted and nursed a hatred of police. And he had no idea Nathaniel, who was reported missing in New South Wales, was living with his brother.
Now, I just want to go back a clip here. This guy was a principal, a school principal, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you have to take this in consideration. People's positions in their lives isn't a guarantee of good behaviour in their private lives. You have to understand this. Obviously, the Christian foundations upheld these guys to be principals in schools and everything. I mean, come on. Why wasn't this father speaking to did he shun them? They were just too much, so he shunned them. This is what the Jehovah's Witnesses do. But this guy was a credible person. He was a principal of a school. That's not a small feat. And so was she.
His brother and his ex-wife.
Apparently she was a high up in the education system as well, possibly a principal as well. So I'm led to believe. Now, what happened to this woman? What happened to this person? How was she so fiercely indoctrinated? What caused her to descend to such a state in which she would shoot at police? I just don't understand how these two guys had so much influence over this lady. I mean, was she naive or something? What was the problem here? She was definitely having sex with I reckon, possibly two of them. I know it's a horrible thing to say, but something's gone wrong somewhere here.
And apparently, if we read what's correct in the media, there was a whole stack of weapons and ammunition at the property.
You must have been shocked to see what had gone on here, that it appears that there was some kind of ambush, the police believe.
Yes, if we read the information correct through the media, there was some type of ambush, and they were supposedly in camouflage gear and all that type of stuff.
Now there's a good shot of the police tactical vehicle with all its hails of bullets and stuff. They've blanked this out for some reason. I'm not sure why, but there's obviously a reason. I don't know what's happened there. I'd like to know. But look, they shot at this vehicle. My daughter's a policewoman, and she said that it was like a war zone, apparently, the barrage of gunfire.
Yeah, and that seems to me, whether they knew they were coming, I don't know.
Now, apparently they actually rang the police. They lured the police to the property so that they could open up on them and fire upon them. Now, okay.
Whether the police were coming, but my heart went out when I found out there were two young police constables who'd been murdered. And that's exactly what it was. They were murdered, and I find that really, really difficult to get my mind around.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the families of those police officers who were killed?
I grieve for them deep. I don't know them, but I do grieve for them because I understand the grief they're going through, because I've had loss, not only of my children, but also of my late wife. So I understand what grief is, and I can't imagine what they're thinking at the moment. I mean,
now there's elements of grief and loss, but there's circumstances in which that takes place. I know it's hard for this man, but these people were killed protecting the lives of others. The ones that were innocent that were killed, that's a different form of grief again. I mean, I know it's all love and these are my children and that, but honestly, the circumstances in which these lives were lost were completely unparalleled.
And the gentleman that came for some reason just to inspect.
Now, the gentleman that came for some reason, there's gunfire, the bush is on fire, there's cars on fire. I mean, do you just sit at home and go, oh, that's normal? No, he came out to figure out what the hell was going on, and they shot him in the back. Well, what have I done? Again, I just had another technical hiccup. The man was saying for some reason, I mean, if you're sitting in your lounge room and there's cars on fire and gunshots and people screaming out, the bush is on fire, it's not just for some reason. It's for a specific reason. Well, he got shot in the back.
Someone that came for some reason just to inspect, to be shot in the back, that is horrific. And there's no excuse for that. No excuse at all. And I don't excuse my boys for their behaviour, their actions, at all.
Obviously, you will cop some criticism because you're their dad.
I understand why people would be critical of me. I mean, I did read something there about he should have raised his children better.
Look, this is the point. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the point. You can be a fantastic parent. You can be doing everything right. You can have it all good. You can be a great parent. But if there's a subconscious idea that there's something you can do or not do to make God happy or stop him from being sad, and that's your subconscious way of living, you're giving sin the opportunity, without you knowing it, to deceive you into doing things that are wrong. This is what the Romans 7's trying to say. Paul wanted to do. What did Paul? Okay, look at Paul. How far is Paul away? Not very far away from these guys. Paul, right, a Pharisee of Pharisees, went around murdering Christians. Right, he went around murdering people. Why? Because he thought there was things he needed to do or not do to make God happy or stop him from being sad, and he gave sin the opportunity through that to getting to the point where he was killing Christians, killing people. Now, these people killed people because they were police. Paul killed people because they were Christians. Still killing, still the same, and it's all via the power of the Mosaic law over our sinful nature, the way in which it empowers it. You've got to get a handle on this.
That's just an ignorant comment because I haven't seen him for 23 years, so I don't know.
Okay, so did you shun them, mate? Did you shun your children? It sounds like it.
They've done in that time, that period of time. Yeah.
And not only that, we're not talking about them as adults. We're talking about how were they raised? What were the rules that were put upon these people as children? Because it has a lot to do with their formation into adults.
How can I respond to that?
Ron Train says his sons will now have to answer to God for their actions.
And here we go. Here we go. All right, now God's a God of judgment instead of grace. Big key. Viewers, big key. Right? For all we know, these people still believed in Christ. What was his name? Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy turned to Christ at the end and don't think he won't be saved because that's how the grace of God works. It's not on merit of what you do. It's on the merit of Christ. As paradoxical as that may sound. Ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the man said these people lost their way. Most certainly lost their way. But saying that they'll have to, we all have to answer to God. We all will answer to God. All of us. No different to anybody else. But the only thing that will save us is our faith in Christ. Not the actions that we do, not the way in which we live. That ain't saving no one. It's the way that it's just our belief in Christ, and he's the author and finisher of our faith. He'll save us, but not by any merit of our own.
Before God for what they've done. They can't be brought to justice now in this world, in the secular world, but they will before God. I'll have to say, I'm sorry, I need to share that with you. What,
to justify yourself? We all going to stand before. It's, there's an element of Muslim belief in that, isn't there? God's going to get you. Come on, mate. It's a little bit unnecessary at this point. Possibly, yeah, if that's the way to go about it. But you're going to stand before God too, and so's the reporter. Why doesn't he say to the reporter, you're going to stand before? We're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ, so each one can give an account for the things which he has done, whether good or bad. And it's a little bit more deeper than that. There's a judgment seat of Christ and, all this other stuff. But I just don't think, obviously, I just don't think that was necessary.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the people of Australia who have all been shocked by this?
What would I say, Chris? Just seek to be understanding.
And that's true. It's a very hard thing to try and understand, and we do have to try and seek to be understanding.
I'm a father. I know that others have been suffering, but I've lost 2 members of my family. My remaining children are trying to cope with what has occurred, even though they haven't seen the other 2 boys for 23 years. There's 5 families involved now. There's my family, there's Stacey's family, there's the 3 victims, the families of the 3 victims. They're all been shattered by what has occurred. So I would ask for compassion and understanding.
See these shrub fires? They're shrub fires where the people that were shooting the police were trying to flush one of the police out that had escaped. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Whether you prep it, lock it.
So there you go, viewers. That's the long and the short of it. You make your own mind up. Just let me remind you, sin has an advantage over us under the law. Because he says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? It's not the law that's the problem. Certainly not. On the contrary, Paul said, I wouldn't have known sin except through the law. What it does is identify the law, identify what the law is saying to us about sin by causing us to sin. For I would not have known covetousness unless the law had said, you shall not covet. But sin, taking opportunity by the commandment, produced all evil desire in me. For apart from the law, ladies and gentlemen, the things we think we need to do or not do to make God happy or stop him from being sad, apart from the law, sin was dead. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Please comment, subscribe, or at least share this channel or do something. Bye for now.